Berlin's underworld was shaken to its core when the Godfather of Berlin, Mahmoud al-Zein, left Germany for good. A 30-year battle between authorities and one of the most notorious Arab crime clans has reached a turning point. But is this truly the end of the story? The tale of Mahmoud al-Zein, often referred to as Berlin's self-proclaimed godfather of crime, reached a dramatic conclusion with his recent deportation, marking a significant milestone in Germany's decades-long campaign to combat the dominance of Arab crime clans within the country. Al-Zein's forced departure symbolizes a hard-fought victory for German authorities in their 30-year battle to dismantle the sprawling criminal networks that have held sway over parts of Berlin and beyond. For years, organized crime syndicates led by figures like Mahmoud al-Zein have cast a long shadow over Berlin's underworld, operating with near impunity. Predominantly composed of Middle Eastern clans, these groups have become synonymous with lawlessness in the capital. Statistics released by authorities this week paint a grim picture. In 2020 alone, crimes tied to these clans occurred at an alarming rate, every 8 hours, on average. Their activities included a litany of offenses, ranging from 5 recorded murders to numerous instances of fraud, as well as brazen disregard for COVID-19 lockdown regulations. These numbers underscore the pervasive nature of their influence and the danger they pose to public safety. The scale and violence of clan-related crime have sparked an intense and often divisive debate in Germany, intertwining issues of security with questions surrounding the integration of migrant communities. The discussion has grown increasingly heated as political leaders and policymakers grapple with the challenge of addressing deeply rooted criminal enterprises without alienating broader immigrant populations. With regional elections in Berlin on the horizon, tackling the influence of these powerful crime clans has become a central and contentious issue, igniting passionate arguments across the political spectrum about the best strategies to secure the city and its future. Mahmoud al-Zein, a figure who came to embody the unchecked rise of ethnic crime syndicates in Berlin, claimed to have been born in Beirut, though this assertion is widely believed to be false. Arriving in Germany in 1982, he quickly established himself as a prominent and feared underworld figure. Dubbed the Fat Man by law enforcement, al-Zein eluded numerous deportation efforts over the years, leveraging a complex network of cultural and familial allegiances to fortify his criminal empire, which was marked by violence and an almost untouchable status within certain communities. However, his reign came to an abrupt end in January when, faced with the looming threat of forced deportation, he chose to leave Germany voluntarily, heading to Turkey. This development followed a year-long crackdown by Berlin's police, who had ramped up their operations against organized crime under the directive of the city's Social Democratic Party. The departure of al-Zein was celebrated by Berlin officials as a significant victory, with authorities pointing to it as evidence that their persistent, small-scale but frequent pinprick strategy to destabilize and intimidate the clans was yielding results. Al-Zein's exit was anything but quiet. Surrounded by a cohort of loyal associates, he caused chaos at the airport as his entourage aggressively tried to block a Der Spiegel camera crew from documenting his final moments in Germany. This theatrical departure highlighted the power and notoriety that al-Zein and similar figures held, serving as a stark reminder of the entrenched influence of Kurdish and Arab clans within Berlin's criminal underworld. Berlin's Interior Minister, Andreas Geisel, hailed al-Zein's removal as a symbolic milestone in the broader fight against clan crime. When addressing clan crime, I have often likened it to running a marathon, Geisel stated. We are still in the early stages, but we have found our stride. In Berlin, the law applies equally to all, and we are steadfast in enforcing it. He emphasized that while al-Zein was just one individual, his departure carried outsized significance. This is a signal, Geisel declared, underscoring the government's commitment to breaking the influence of these powerful syndicates. The issue of crime clans, predominantly hailing from North Africa and the Middle East, has become so pervasive in Berlin that their activities have woven themselves into the city's cultural fabric. In a bizarre twist, their notoriety has even inspired guided tours that explore their impact on local neighborhoods. However, their shadowy system of parallel justice and blatant disregard for local laws remain deeply troubling for authorities. It is estimated that around 20 influential families dominate organized crime in Berlin, with 7 or 8 of these clans considered highly active. Their activities, ranging from money laundering to violent extortion, have created sharp divides within German society, especially in the wake of the 2015 migrant crisis, which saw hundreds of thousands of refugees fleeing war and poverty settle in the country. The influx heightened tensions and complicated the public discourse surrounding migration and integration, adding fuel to the rise of far-right political parties. For years, the fear of appearing racist or xenophobic paralyzed some state governments, leading to inaction against these clans. Experts argue that this hesitation allowed the gangs to flourish. In response to growing public frustration and political pressure, Berlin implemented a 5-point plan in 2018 aimed at dismantling the gang's operations. This initiative included aggressive prosecutions, seizing assets, and stepping up police activity. In an effort to address the pervasive influence of organized crime clans in Berlin, the opposition Christian Democratic Union proposed a series of drastic measures, including lowering the age of criminal responsibility from 14 to 12. This controversial suggestion aims to counteract the growing trend of gangs using children as drug couriers, exploiting the current legal protections for minors. According to Berlin police data, in 2020 alone, 1 child under the age of 14 was implicated in more than 5 criminal offenses, underscoring the urgency of the issue. Another striking proposal from the CDU involves removing children from the families of gang leaders. This measure is intended to disrupt the cyclical nature of criminal succession within these tightly knit family structures. The clans, rooted in deeply entrenched familial loyalty, often operate as closed networks where crime is passed down through generations. These groups, predominantly consisting of Lebanese, Iraqi Kurdish, and Turkish families, are structured around a central patriarchal figure and vary in size from a few hundred to several thousand members. In Berlin alone, some of these families maintain sprawling networks with substantial influence. The city's Arab migrant population, which numbers approximately 156,000 individuals and constitutes around 4% of Berlin's total population, has become a focal point in the broader discussion of integration and crime. Notably, only 1/3 of this group holds German citizenship, complicating efforts to address systemic issues within these communities. A government commission report highlighted that these clans are built on insular family structures with unwavering internal loyalties, which often place them beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement strategies. The roots of these clan networks can be traced back to historical waves of migration to Germany. Following the devastation of World War II, West Germany welcomed foreign workers to help rebuild its shattered economy. Agreements with countries such as Morocco, Turkey, and Tunisia in the 1960s led to an influx of labor migrants. Decades later, a second wave of migration occurred during the Lebanese Civil War, significantly increasing the population of Middle Eastern migrants in Berlin. Between 1980 and 1992, the number of migrants in West Berlin surged from 100,000 to over 400,000, further diversifying the city's demographics. During the 1980s, a wave of hostility against newly arrived migrants in Germany created significant challenges for these communities, exacerbating their struggles. Believing that these immigrants would eventually return to their home countries, authorities implemented policies that slashed social benefits and imposed strict barriers to employment, leaving little room for integration or long-term opportunities. Among the hardest hit were Kurdish refugees, who had already faced systemic oppression in Turkey and Lebanon and now found themselves marginalized in their new host country. With few legal avenues to sustain themselves, many migrants turned to illicit activities to survive. A former gang member who immigrated during this period claimed that as many as 90% of refugees in Berlin were forced to engage in illegal trades, including selling drugs and stolen goods, to make ends meet. This grim reality was a direct consequence of a system that failed to provide basic support, compounding their economic desperation. At the same time, migrants faced significant hostility and resentment from the local population, further deepening their alienation. Police forces, stretched thin and often indifferent, struggled to protect immigrant communities from violent attacks, including arson assaults carried out by neo-Nazi groups. Left to fend for themselves, some migrants organized self-defense groups, arming themselves with baseball bats to protect their families and homes against the growing tide of violence. A recent report has revealed that Berlin's state government has been reluctant to confront the deeply entrenched influence of criminal clans in certain Arab-majority neighborhoods, creating an atmosphere where fear and inaction prevail. This hesitation stems, in part, from a pervasive climate of fear surrounding even the mention of clan members' names, the report claims. The unwillingness to challenge these groups head-on has allowed them to operate with near impunity, resolving their disputes internally, often through extreme violence. The report draws on interviews with clan members and leaders, painting a grim picture of unchecked criminality. While groups like the Italian Mafia are said to engage in more covert operations, Berlin's Arab clans are likened to fighting with the machete, according to Tom Schreiber, a Berlin politician who has closely studied the issue. This tolerance of violent behavior has emboldened the clans, fostering a sense of invulnerability that encourages more audacious criminal activities and open displays of wealth acquired through illegal means. Arab crime syndicates stand out among Berlin's various criminal networks, vying for dominance and flaunting their successes in what has become a competitive display of affluence. Ahmad Omairate, an economist who studies these clans, notes that their members aim not only to amass wealth but also to achieve the kind of notoriety associated with celebrities. They want to be as wealthy as Russian and Vietnamese gangs but as famous as movie stars, he explained. This culture of competition extends to their ostentatious displays on social media, where they showcase luxury cars, such as Lamborghinis, and high-end watches like Rolexes, in an ongoing bid to outdo rival groups. The pursuit of status often leads to escalating demonstrations of superiority, with one group trying to outshine another by acquiring even more expensive possessions. The Berlin police report, published this week, underscores the extent of the problem. It identified 388 individuals involved in clan-related crimes, with almost half holding German citizenship. Lebanese nationals accounted for 18%, while Turkish citizens represented 6%, and the remaining 16% were of unclear or unknown nationality, complicating potential deportation efforts. In 2020 alone, 1,013 crimes were linked to these clans, committed by 291 suspects, with offenses ranging from drug trafficking and theft to violent assaults and traffic violations. The most active offenders were aged between 18 and 25, highlighting a younger generation entrenched in criminal activity. One particularly prolific 23-year-old Syrian suspect committed 48 crimes in 2020 and was tied to over 170 offenses in the past 5 years. The clan's criminal repertoire has evolved over generations. While the first wave of gang activity focused on drug smuggling, protection rackets, and prostitution, their descendants, raised within a culture of organized crime, have added high-profile heists to their list of operations. Notable examples include the infamous 2019 theft of 18th-century jewels worth an estimated $1 billion from Dresden's Green Vault Museum, the largest heist in Germany's modern history, and the theft of a 100-kilogram Canadian gold coin valued at $4.4 million from Berlin's Bode Museum. The brazen murder of gang enforcer Nadal Rabi in a busy Berlin park in 2018, carried out amidst a violent turf war, shocked the public and reignited calls for more decisive action against organized crime. The attack, committed in full view of families enjoying the park, highlighted the growing audacity of criminal gangs in the city. It underscored the urgent need for a stronger political and law enforcement response to curb the escalating violence tied to clan rivalries. Rabi's funeral was an extraordinary spectacle, drawing a crowd of around 2,000 people, including some of Germany's most infamous crime bosses. Mahmoud Zein, a figure synonymous with the Berlin underworld, was prominently present, donning a bomber jacket and flanked by a group of men in hoodies. The scene symbolized the power and influence these crime syndicates wield within their communities. Zein, often seen as untouchable, openly embraced his notoriety. He even published a book titled The Godfather of Berlin, my way, my family, my rules, in which he candidly detailed his rise within the criminal hierarchy. Zein thrived in a subculture that idolized criminal ruthlessness and disdain for conventional employment. He is nobody, yet for the boys, he will be revered as a president, remarked a political scientist interviewed for Professor Matthias Rowe's influential 2015 report on Arab crime clans. This insight highlights the allure figures like Zein hold for disillusioned youth, who see these criminals as symbols of power and defiance. Despite his confidence in being above the law, German authorities finally succeeded in deporting Zein by unraveling his tangled personal history. They discovered that, contrary to his long-standing claims of Lebanese nationality, he was in fact Turkish. This revelation allowed for his removal, circumventing the common tactic among gang members of evading deportation by withholding official documents identifying their country of origin. Zein was not the only high-profile figure to be expelled. In 2019, Ibrahim Miri, another prominent clan boss, was deported to Lebanon twice after years of operating from his stronghold in Bremen. These deportations sent shockwaves through the clan networks. It caused significant debates within the clans, Professor Rowe explained. Some of them believed they were untouchable. These actions were part of Berlin's zero-tolerance campaign against organized crime. The strategy involved intense police surveillance and frequent raids on businesses associated with gang operations, including shisha bars, cafes, barbershops, and properties. In 2020 alone, Berlin police confiscated 91 weapons and 78 luxury vehicles tied to these criminal networks. However, the results of these efforts have been mixed. Economist Ahmad Omairate, who studies Arab clans, pointed out the limitations of the crackdown. "It's not really working," he said. "They might face pressure in Berlin, but they simply relocate to other cities and continue their operations there." He also noted that many of these clans have entrenched themselves within society, making it harder to dismantle their networks. In addition, they have diversified their activities, laundering money through legitimate businesses and moving assets into legal enterprises. Professor Rowe acknowledged that while law enforcement had improved its strategies, significant challenges remained, particularly in tracing the profits of illegal activities. "These people are often very intelligent, at least the leaders," he said. "They launder money by purchasing hotels and real estate in places like Western Turkey, Sweden, and other parts of the world. Tracing these financial flows is extremely difficult." The rise of figures like Zein and the systemic challenges in addressing their activities illustrate the complexities of dismantling organized crime in Berlin. The intertwining of criminal enterprises with legitimate business and the international nature of their financial networks make the fight against these clans a daunting task that demands sustained and innovative efforts.